55 for this conference call on PURIM. All right. Leviticus chapter 25 and 55. Leviticus 25 and 55. For unto me the children of Israel are servants. They are my servants, whom I brought forth out of the land of Egypt. I am the Most High, your power. So whose servants are we? The Most High servants. So our job is to be servants for the Most High, and as servants, if we fail to serve him, then Deuteronomy 28, 15 through 68, the curses kicks in. This is what we're experiencing today in America, being under the curse of not obeying our Father in heaven. Whose Father? The Israelites' Father, no one else's. Okay? So these curses kick in. And in reverse, he maketh us to serve our enemies until we again come back to righteousness. So this is what we're doing now. We're gathering, we're trying to understand his word, to come back to righteousness, to come back to our understanding of the ancient days. Okay? And we're going to go through the scriptures of Esther, and we'll show you how even during the days of Esther, the people were all of a dark complexion. Okay? So we'll go through the scriptures now, and let's go to Jeremiah chapter 2 to prove that we are servants, even in this day and time. It's Jeremiah 2 and 14. Jeremiah 2 and 14. Is Israel a servant? Is he a homeborn slave? Why is he spoiled? And you look at our people today, we are spoiled as a people. You know, look at the things that we have achieved. Everything we've achieved, we haven't benefited from. Okay? We got us still in the same slum areas that we've always been in. Okay? Our school systems are still the poorest in the world. You know, so I mean, the things that we have are rich compared to third world countries, but in this country, we can never get above where we should be. We actually built this country up. By us building the country up, we have no parts to the inheritance that we built up. Okay? And this constant red tape preventing us from jumping over that line to get to that inheritance of what? Prosperity. And prosperity is something we'll never get in this kingdom. Okay? So the Christian pastors teach prosperity. You're not going to achieve it in this kingdom. Okay? Just so you understand. The Most High wants us to serve out a judgment. We've been serving our judgment for 398 years. All right? And even longer than that when you look at the other captivities. All right? So verse 15. The young lions roared upon him and yelled, and they made his land waste. His cities are burnt without inhabitant. Also the children of Neph and Taphanes have broken the crown of thy land. This is Israel. Hast thou not procured this unto thyself, in that thou hast forsaken the Most High thy power when he led thee by the way? And now what hast thou to do in the way of Egypt, to drink the waters of Sihor? Or what hast thou to do in the way of Assyria, to drink the waters of the river? Thine own wickedness shall correct you. This is what the Most High is telling Israel. He's telling our people, your wickedness, you're going to get tired of getting your back whipped. You're going to get tired of being the last hire first fire. You're going to get tired of that. This is what the Most High is telling us. You're going to get tired of being on food stamps. You're going to get tired of not being able to win the lottery. All right? You're going to get tired of going to the same job and being mistreated. You're going to get tired of that. All right? And you can't escape it. Your sons can, your daughters can. They might get a decent job, but it's not going to put them over the top. Right? They're not going to be able to take care of their family for the rest of their life based on that one job. Right? It's just enough for them. It says, and thy backsliding shall reprove you. Know therefore and see that it is an evil thing and bitter that thou hast forsaken the Most High thy power, and that my fear is not in you, saith the Most High of hosts. So we're supposed to have fear of the Most High. A lot of us don't know how to fear the Most High anymore. So as you see, we have served many captivities to this day. All right? The great ones that we've served was Egypt. We've all heard the story about the Israelites being in Egypt, going through the Red Sea. The other one was what? The Assyrians. then the Babylonians, then the Persians and the Medes, which we're going to read about today with Esther, then the Greeks, then the Romans, and last but not least, America. All right, these are the 7 great captivities that the Israelites have been in. We've built up every single kingdom that we've been in captivity under. All right, but overall, we are in the 4th kingdom mentioned of in Daniel chapter 7 and 7, verse 7. Okay, all those kingdoms, when you read Daniel 7, talks about us being in that 4th great kingdom. Let's go there real quick. Daniel chapter 7, verse 7. And see, this is the mystery that our people today don't know. They don't know the history of who they are. They don't know the history of how we got to this point where we are now. They don't know how we were in Egypt, but we were the slaves in Egypt, building the pyramids. And now that information has been wiped from us. Okay? They don't want us to remember. But then when you look at us not having we don't have our names anymore, our culture. We don't have our old mama's recipes. We don't have anything. We don't have a land to go to. We don't have a language. Why would they strip us of all these things if we weren't a very important people? Abraham Lincoln said in one of the articles that he said, I'll never forget this, Abraham said, as long as the blacks are in this country, blacks and whites have the same type of mentality of superiority. He said in order for them to keep their superiority, they will have to continue to label the blacks as inferior as long as we're in this country. Or we'll always have the wrestling back and forth. And that goes back to Genesis 25 and 21. Jacob and Esau. All right? That goes right back to that scripture. Esau is the so-called white man. Jacob is the so-called black man. Okay? So we have to always remember that. This is part of prophecy, us being together in the same land. All right? So let's go to Daniel chapter 7, verse 7. And it reads, Daniel 7 and 7. And this chapter is talking about the 4 great kingdoms on the earth. It says, after this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. All right, now this is not an animal with iron teeth. You can look on the planet everywhere. There's no animal that has iron teeth. This is talking about the might of this kingdom. All right, it devoured and broke in pieces. And when you look at the iron teeth, those are your missiles, those are your bullets, those are your guns, those are your swords, those are the iron teeth. Okay, those are the needles that they put in your body. Those are the iron teeth. It says, and stamped the residue with the feet of it, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. Okay, what are those 10 horns? What came out of the 4th greatest kingdom? That's of the United Nations. Okay, so the 10 horns are in there. America is another one. So let's go here and let's go to Leviticus chapter 23. So those are the kingdoms that we're in. So we're going to read about this 3rd kingdom, which was the Persians and the Medes, which you can read in chapter 7 of Daniel, which is the 5th verse. Okay. So let's go to Leviticus chapter 23 and 4. Leviticus 23 and 4. Leviticus chapter 23 and 4. These are the feasts of the Lord, even holy convocations, which you shall proclaim in their seasons. All right, so the Most High gave us feast days, like the Day of Atonement, the Feast of Tabernacles. He gave us Passover, which is coming up. Okay, there's feast days that the Most High deemed on us that we have to keep throughout our generations. Let's look at the 44th verse. The 44th verse. And Moses declared unto the children of Israel the feast of the Most High. So the Most High spoke through Moses that, look, declare this to them so they'll always remember it. Speak it out loud so they'll never forget it. Okay, that's how you declare it. You declare ownership to it. All right, it's a declaration. Okay. So let's go into what Purim is. Okay, let's go into this real quick. And I want to start off a little different than what I did last year with Purim. I want to show you, brothers and sisters, Purim in the New Testament before we go into the Old Testament. All right. So many brothers who teach on Purim never really go into the New Testament, showing that the Hamashiach kept Purim. Okay. All the feast days that you see in the Old Testament, the Lord kept the feast days. Okay. So let's go to John, the book of John. Gospel of John. And let's go to Gospel of John, chapter 5. Gospel of John, chapter 5. And let's read the first verse. And it reads, "After this, there was a feast of the Jews. And Yahushua went up to Jerusalem." Or Yarushalaim. Okay, so what is the feast of the Jews? And how can you tell if this was the feast of the Jews, which was Purim? How could you tell? So we're going to go into the scriptures and solve this mystery. Okay, let's go to John chapter 2. John chapter 2. And I'm going to walk you through how Yahushua walked the earth for a year or more. All right, real quick. John chapter 2, verse 1. "And the third day there was a marriage in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Yahushua was there." All right. So what was there? A marriage. "And both Yahushua was called and his disciples to the marriage." So they were all called to this marriage. Let's drop down to the 8th verse. All right. Same stuff, same marriage. It says, "And he saith unto them, Draw out now and bear it to the governor of the feast. And they bear it." So this marriage was considered a what? A feast. Okay, so marriages were considered feast, not high holy days like Passover, Day of Atonement. Marriages are considered a feast. You have a feast on a wedding. All right. Verse 9. "When the ruler of the feast had tasted the water that was made wine, and knew not whence it was, but the servants which drew the water knew, the governor of the feast called the bridegroom, and saith unto him, Every man at the beginning do set forth good wine, and when men have well drunk, then that which is worse, but thou hast kept the good wine until now. This beginning of miracles did Yahushua in Cana of Galilee, and manifested forth his glory, and the disciples believed on him." Now, why am I bringing this out? Because I'm trying to give you a timeline of Purim. Okay, so this feast happened, and who's the one there with Yahushua? The governor. So he had friends of high stature. Okay, so this is to tell you, you ain't got to be a fool in front of people who are of high stature. You can still do, merry things in front of people. For the Most High. All right. So Yahushua knew a governor. He was invited to a wedding. He didn't stay away from a wedding. He went to the wedding. All right. So weddings are good things. They are of the Most High, especially when they're given hand in hand in the name of the Most High, Yahweh. All right. So let's go from there and let's jump to 12, verse 12. "So after this he went down to Capernaum, he and his mother and his brethren and his disciples, and they continued there not many days. And the Jews' Passover was at hand, and Yahushua went up to Jerusalem." So we all know that Passover comes during the month of Abib, correct? Abib is roughly March, April, right around that time. So this was Passover. So right before the Passover, there was a wedding feast. All right. So just so you understand, this is just a little timeline so you can follow along. So let's jump to 23rd verse. Gospel of John chapter 2 verse 23. "Now when he was in Jerusalem at the Passover," now he's at the Passover. Before it was a few days before, but now he's at the Passover. 2 days went by. "Now when he was in Jerusalem at the Passover in the feast day, many believed in his name when they saw the miracles which he did." Okay, what miracle did he do? What miracle did he do? The miracle was changing water to wine. That was huge. That was a huge miracle. Not only that, if you read on verses above this, it said that he was in the temple throwing over the changers, the money makers. He was throwing the money makers' change over on tables because they were selling in the Most High's temple. All right, so they remembered what he did. These were miracles. These were things that didn't happen. Some people applauded this. They knew that the Jews were going off selling things on the Sabbath day. All right, so let's go on. Let's fast forward a year or two. We're going to fast forward about a year. Okay, so we're going to jump to the 4th chapter because the 3rd chapter is still within that same time frame. But when you go to the 4th chapter, that's considered a whole nother year. Okay, so John chapter 4 verse 1. We'll go to John chapter 4 verse 1. We're going to pick up the momentum now. When therefore the Most High knew how the Pharisees had heard that Yahushua made and baptized more disciples than John, thou, Yahushua himself, baptized not, but his disciples. He left Judea and departed again unto Galilee. So wait a minute. Let's go back. Let's go back to John chapter 2. Why did he only baptize his disciples? Let's go back to John chapter 2. Let's read verse 24. 2 and 24. But Yahushua did not commit himself unto them because he knew all men, and needed not that any should testify of man, for he knew what was in man. So at that time he was not making himself known who he was. This is why he only baptized his disciples. Okay? He didn't baptize all men. He was keeping his miracles secret after that. All right? Let's jump back to John chapter 4, verse 3. John 4 and 3. He left Judea and departed again into Galilee, and he must needs go through Samaria. So, okay, so now he's going through Samaria, okay? Things are changing up here. All right? So we're going to move on. Let's go to John 4 and 34. John 4 and 34. Yahushua said unto him, my meat is to do the will of him that sent me, and to finish his work. Say not you, there are yet 4 months, and then cometh harvest. What harvest comes in 4 months of the new year? It would have to be Pentecost. Okay? So Pentecost comes, if we're in Adar now, this is the last month of the year. For those of you tuning in who've never knew our calendar, December is not the last month of the year. Okay? The last month of the year is February to March. That's why when you get to April, they tell you April Fools. All right? But December is the 10th month of the year. That's why they call it decade. December, meaning 10. Okay? So 11, 12, you count from February, 4 months later, that's when everything begin to, that's when your harvest start to come. So that's why he said 4 months later. Let's read that again. Verse 4 and John 4 and 34. Jesus said, 35. Say not ye, there are yet 4 months, and then cometh harvest. Behold, I say unto you, lift up your eyes and look on the fields, for they are white already to harvest. Okay, when you see a tree, before it starts to bloom, or before it starts to bloom and have fruit on it, you'll see like a plum tree, have like white leaves on it. And then the white leaves come in and they'll break off, and then they become red leaves. And then the plums will start coming a month or 2 months later, or 3 months later. Okay? So this is what he's talking about. You can look at the leaves and tell when the seasons are. Okay? So Yahushua has given us a dateline of where he is during this time frame. Okay? Let's go to, let's read to verse 36. And he that reapeth receiveth wages, and gather fruit unto life eternal. So he's making this parable, liken it to those farmers who are harvesting. That both he that soweth and he that reapeth may rejoice together. All right, so this is when the reaper comes in. Let's go to John 4:45. John 4:45. It says, "Then when he was come into Galilee, the Galileans received him, having seen all the things that he did at Jerusalem at the feast. For they also went unto the feast." What feast? This was a year later. This was a year later. So the feast that the Galileans was talking about, they were talking about the wedding feast. Okay? When you read this verse, it's talking about the wedding feast that happened a year ago. Because remember, Passover already came and went. So we can move forward. We move forward a year. So these Galileans, you know how brothers are. You go to a party and they got the wine there. They're like, "Oh man, you see what he did? He just made water in the wine. The wine was good." Brothers talk about that all day long. When they see him, they was happy to see him. Like, "Man, this is the dude that made the water in the wine." It's a big thing. Okay? Let's go to verse 46. "So Yahushua came again into Cana of Galilee, where he made the water wine. And there was a certain nobleman whose son was sick at Capernaum." Okay, so I just want to show you that this was a year later, and the Israelite Galileans, because the Galileans were Israelites, all right, they remembered that miracle. All right, so now when you jump to John 5:1, let's go to John 5:1. John 5:1. So we have a date line. We know Passover already came and went. And now we know that they're at the beginning of the year based on John 4:45. He said that 4 months from now is the Pentecost. So when you go to John 5:1, it says, "After this there was a feast of the Jews, and Yahushua went up to Jerusalem." Okay? So this is when that happened. So when you look at that, how do you prove that Yahushua was keeping the feast of the Jews? Let's go to the book of Esther. Let's go to the book of Esther in the Bible. Just so you know that our Lord and Savior, Hamashiach Yahushua, kept the feast days too. In the book of Esther, chapter 9, verse 28. Esther, chapter 9, verse 28. "And that these days should be remembered and kept throughout every generation, every family, every province, every city, and that these days of Purim should not fail from among the Jews." See, this was the feast of the Jews. "Nor the memorial of them perish from their seed." So Yahushua knew that we had to keep this feast day. It was something very special to us Jews. All right, let's go back to John. And let's fast forward from John 5:1 to John 6:4 to prove that this was before the next Passover. John chapter 6, verse 4. John chapter 6, verse 4. "And the Passover, a feast of the Jews, was near." Okay, so they were getting ready for the next Passover. So this proves to you that Purim, they were keeping the month of Adar, and they were keeping the days of Purim, which is the 13th and the 14th day of Adar, or of February, March. Okay, so this is how we do it. And we know what month we're in based on what? The new moon. And the new moon is not a full moon. A new moon is when you don't see a moon up in the sky. It's just dark with a little small slither. Okay, that is a new moon. And that's how you calculate the years and the times in the seasons based on the new moon. Okay, and after a while you get used to looking at it and determining the days that it is. All right, let's go to let me give you extra credit. Let's read John 5:2. This is extra credit for you brothers and sisters. This is actually a mystery. So John 5:2. If you don't know what John 5:1 is, then you can't solve John 5:2 on down. You get what I'm saying? So John 5:2 reads, "Now there is at Jerusalem by the sheep market a pool, which is called in the Hebrew tongue Bethesda, having 5 porches. In these lay a great multitude of impotent folk, of blind, halt, withered, waiting for the moving of the water. For an angel went down at a certain season into the pool and troubled the water. Whosoever then first, after the troubling of the water, stepped in, was made whole of whatsoever disease he had. Okay? So when you look at this, if there was an angel there that made people whole every time this new year came around, what month was that? What month was that? It was during this time of PURIM. So it probably still happens in Jerusalem, but they had to do it through Yahushua now. All right? When you read on, it tells you, verse 3. And a certain man was there, which had an infirmity 38 years. When Yahushua saw him, when Yahushua saw him lie, and knew that he had been now a long time in that case, he said unto him, Wilt thou be made whole? The impotent man answered him, Sir, I have no man when the water is troubled, to put me into the pool. But while I am coming, another steppeth down before me. Yahushua said unto him, Rise, take up thy bed and walk. And immediately the man was made whole and took up his bed and walked. And on the same day was the Sabbath day. Okay, so this was during the month of Adar, during the time of PURIM, on the what day? On the Sabbath day. All right, that's a mystery unfolded for you right there, brothers and sisters. All right, so that's something, that's one up you got on the Christians. You got to go through your Hamashiach Yahushua in order to get understanding. All right, so what are we doing? Testifying of what? Hamashiach Yahushua. Let's go to John 5 and 39 and we'll get into the lesson. It's already 9:10. John 5 and 39. Search the scriptures, for in them you think you have eternal life. This is what pastors do. This is what even Israelites do. We search the scriptures, but you have to search the scriptures doing what? Read on. And they are they which testify of me. Testify of what? Mashiach Yahushua. The scriptures is releasing information about how Hamashiach Yahushua conducted his days, times, and years all through the Bible. Because he was the angel in the Old Testament. All right? And you will not come to me that you might have life. I receive not honor from men, but I know you, that you have not the love of the Most High in you. All right? So you got to have faith. You have to have belief. You have to have understanding that the Most High sent his right hand, his right arm, to come on earth to save us. I am come in my Father's name, and you receive me not. If another shall come in his own name, him you will receive. How can you believe? Which receive honor one of another, and seek not the honor that cometh from the Most High only. Because remember, Hamashiach Yahushua has no power unless it comes from his Father. And it's the same thing with us. We have no power unless we go through Hamashiach and his Father. All right? You see Negroes always trying to get the power. They don't know how to get the power. They don't know how to use Yahushua through the scriptures to understand the laws and statutes and commandments. They don't understand. All right, so let's move on. Let's go to PURIM. Let's go into Esther, the Apocrypha. Are there any questions at this point? Any questions? All right. If there are no other questions, go ahead.
Quick.
Go ahead,
You want to remind us if you go from the Esther in the Apocrypha and when you go to the Esther in the Old Testament, right? So that way we'll follow with you.
Con. Yeah, so I'll start with the Apocrypha and I'll read it, and we'll go from there into the Old Testament in the Bible. Okay? I mean, well, both of them are Old Testament, but I'll say the Apocrypha. So, the book of Esther in the Apocrypha, we'll start with the 11th chapter, and this is just showing validity that this chapter, this book is showing you that it is valid according to the Bible. It's speaking of the same thing. Okay? So we're going to read about Esther chapter 11, verse 1. And it says, In the 4th year of the reign of Ptolemy and Cleopatra, Dostheus, who said he was a priest and Levite, and Ptolemy his son brought this epistle of Purim, which they said was the same, and that Lysimachus, the son of Ptolemy, that was in Jerusalem, had interpreted. So who got a hold of our paperwork? Who got a hold of our Bibles? Who got a hold of our history books? Ptolemy and his men. Right? When you do the study of history, the 12 elders of Israel brought the Bible to Ptolemy, who was in Egypt, to translate it to the Egyptian tongue, to give it to the Israelites who were scattered in Egypt during that time, during the time of the Greeks. Okay? So they are now breaking down Purim. Okay? Verse 2. In the second year of the reign of Artaxerxes the Great, in the first day of the month of Nisan. Nisan is the same thing as our Abib. All right? This is Xerxes. This is Xerxes. Xerxes, the son of Jairus, the son of Simei, the son of Sisi, the son, of the tribe of Benjamin, had a dream. All right.
Has arrived.
I'm sorry, Akim. That's Mordecai. When you see Mordecus, so in the Apocrypha, it's more in Greek, so the words are different, a little different than what you read in the Bible. So this is Mordecai, not Mordecus. Mordecai. All right, verse 3. So just so you know that the Israelites, the Benjamites, are the tribe of Benjamin, who dwelt with the tribe of Judah in the southern kingdom of Israel. They went into captivity, okay, under the Babylonians and then under the Persians and the Medes. All right, so verse 3, it says, who was a Jew and dwelt in the city of Susu, a great man, being a servitor in the king's court. So back then, our people, they held certain jobs, just like our people hold certain jobs today. We got brothers and sisters who work in the government, just like our forefathers back then. Daniel worked in the government. Daniel was a president in, 60-something provinces when you read Daniel, the 6th chapter. All right? He was our first president, really. All right? So when you go through the scriptures, look at Joseph, look at Moses. They all held upstanding positions in the government. So here you have Mordecai during the Persian Medes captivity. Mordecai held a position in the king's court, right, as a gatekeeper. Verse 4. He was also one of the captives which Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, carried from Jerusalem, with Jeconiah, king of Judea. And this was his dream. So here's Mordecai having a dream about what was going to happen in this Persian captivity. Behold, a noise of a tumult, with thunder and earthquakes and uproar in the land. And behold, 2 great dragons came forth, ready to fight. And their cry was great. And at their cry all nations were prepared to battle, that they might fight against the righteous people. Who are the righteous people? The Israelites. And to a day of darkness and obscurity, tribulation and anguish, affliction and great uproar upon the earth. And the whole righteous nation was troubled, fearing their own evils, and were ready to perish. Then they cried unto the Most High, and upon their cry, as it were from a little fountain, was made a great flood, even much water. This is what we're trying to do today. Our little cry is going to become a great flood, like in the book of Ezekiel. All right? It says that we're going to cry a river. Verse 11. The light and the sun rose up, and the lowly were exalted, and devoured the glorious. Now when Mordecai, who had seen this dream, and what the Most High had determined to do, was awake, he bare this dream in mind, and until night by all means was desirous to know it. So the Most High showed Mordecai a dream of something to come in this great kingdom of Persia. Okay? And it was the uprising of the Israelites. Okay? He couldn't figure it out at that time, but he knew that this dream was of the Most High. Okay? So let's read verse 2. And Mordecai took his rest in the court with Gabbatha and Thara, the 2 eunuchs of the king, and keepers of the palace. Now, when you look at this verse, eunuchs, a lot of brothers, I've spoken on this before, eunuchs are brothers who were castrated. Castrated how? They were castrated when they didn't have their private parts. Okay, because they had certain jobs where they were within the king's castle, where kings had harems, where they had a group of women who were their maidens, all right, or they were married to a lot of other women and concubines. They didn't want to put these men around these women, and then they mess around and get the women pregnant. So they would castrate them. But when you go into prophecy, when you look at 2 Kings, all right, because remember it was the changing of rulership from the Babylonians to the Persians. Let's go to Daniel 1:1 first. Daniel chapter 1, and let's read verse 3. Daniel 1 and 3. If you're there, we'll get started. I'm just trying to wait for you, brothers and sisters. All right, so I'll start at 2. And the Most High gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, with part of the vessels of the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinar, to the house of his God. Shinar is Ethiopia. And he brought the vessels into the treasure house of his God. So he took our jewels and took it into their house of their gods. And the king spoke unto Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel, and of the king's seed, and of the princes. Right? So a lot of the children of Judah were castrated. They became eunuchs, which was a prophecy in the Bible. When you look at 2 Kings, far back as 2 Kings, the Most High prophesied that we were going to be eunuchs in a captivity. When you look at 2 Kings chapter 20, and I'm being very meticulous tonight. I'm going through the scriptures with a fine tooth and comb for you brothers and sisters who are listening. So I hope you're paying close attention. 2 Kings chapter 20, verse 17, it says, this is a prophecy. It says, behold, the days come that all that is in thine house, and that which thy fathers have laid up in store unto this day, shall be carried into Babylon. All right, that was a prophecy. It had to happen yet at that time. Nothing shall be left, saith the Lord. The jewels, the silver, the gold was all taken from the house of our power to the house of the fake gods. All right. Verse 18. And of thy sons that shall issue from you, which thou shalt beget, shall they take away. And they shall be eunuchs in the palace of the king of Babylon. So what happened in the book of Esther? The Persian king overpowered the Babylonians and beat down Nebuchadnezzar and took all his slaves, all his eunuchs, and put them in his house. Okay, when you read the book of Esther. So let's go back to Esther in Apocrypha, chapter 12, verse 2. And he heard their devices and searched out their purposes and learned that they were about to lay hands upon Xerxes the king, and so certified the king of them. Then the king examined the 2 eunuchs, and after that, they had confessed it, they were strangled. So these were Judites, more than likely, trying to strangle the king. Okay? So the king turned around and had them strangled. See, the thing about strangulation in those days, that was the cleanest thing to do, besides running a sword. See, even the heathen nations didn't believe in killing people with blood, with, running the sword through them. If they did that, they had a certain area to do that because it polluted the city. Okay? Today, this place is wicked. They don't do that, but you don't see that ever being taking place around Washington, D.C., around the White House. Right? They always take their people way out to other islands, like Guatemala Bay and those places before they do something crazy, right? But back in those days, they strangled a lot of their captives. Okay? When you read the book of Tobit, you'll notice that a lot of the captives were strangled. The demon Asmodeus. That's where you get the word asthma from. Okay? Asthma is a form of strangulation. People die from asthma. Okay? And that's what Tobit was experiencing. The angel came and chased that demon out of there. All right? So let's read verse 4. And the king made a record of these things. And Mordecai also wrote thereof, So the king commanded Mordecai to serve in the court, and for this he rewarded him. Howbeit Haman, the son of Amathus, the Agagite, who was in great honor with the king, sought to molest Mordecai and his people because of the 2 eunuchs of the king. So Mordecai was a Benjamite, and Mordecai was actually Queen Esther's uncle. Okay? So we have to understand that when we see the book called Esther, which means Easter actually, because when you really look at the word Esther, her name wasn't Esther, it was Hadassah. Hadassah means a myrtle tree, okay, in ancient Hebrew. It means myrtle tree, Hadassah. Okay, and when you look at myrtle trees are one of the oldest famous trees in biblical history in the ancient days. Okay, the myrtle tree had many cures and many benefits to curing people. Asthma, cancer, skin disease, all those different type of things, hallucinations, sugar levels, and so forth. But Esther's name meant Hadassah, but it was changed when she went to Babylonia, to Persia. It was changed to Esther, meaning Easter, meaning a star, right? So they were worshiping pagan gods back then. So all of our people names always got changed in captivity, just like ours. All right. So as we read, who is this enemy called Haman? Okay, so Mordecai did a great thing. Haman was this man that was hiding in the dark. He was behind the scenes. And Haman was an Edomite. Okay? He was the only Edomite in that land, other than his family. But he had rose to a high status in the king's land. Okay? When you see Purim, pure, P-U-R, in the Persian language means lots thrown at Haman. That's what it means. A lot thrown at Haman. Okay? Lots meaning gamble. Okay? So he was gambling with his power to destroy what? The Israelites. So what I'm going to show you right now is first and foremost how Mordecai basically he became a right-hand man by setting up these 2 eunuchs who were actually his brothers, because they was getting ready to strangle the king. So he did a righteous thing in not having the king destroyed by doing the righteous act. Okay, he could have easily sat back and let the king get strangled, but no, that was his job to prevent it from happening. Okay, and the one who set the whole thing up was Haman, the Edomite. He was striving for power. So just think, if Mordecai allowed it to happen, then the Edomite will be ruling over Persia. Okay, so he had to stop this from happening. It was a spiritual thing. All right. So by him stopping it, he got rewarded and became the king's gatekeeper. Okay. So let's go to I want to show you how Haman. Let's see, and I'm just walking you through how all this happened. Okay. Where are we at? Let's go to Esther. Let's go to Esther in the Holy Bible. Let's go to the 2nd chapter. We're going to go into the Old Testament. And let's read Esther chapter 2, verse 1. Are you brothers and sisters with me today? You guys following along? It's a lot of information. Just trying to get it to you. You guys following along? Can you hear me okay? Okay.
I'm with you.
Okay, so I was going to read the 1st chapter. The 1st chapter has a lot of meat in it. And basically, the king of Persia was married to a beautiful woman named Vashti, who rebelled against the kingdom. All right, the king of Xerxes, when you read, King Xerxes had a great party and had all the governors, all the kings come to his party, basically to promote Persia, promote his laws within that land. And he had his wife come out to show her off in front of the rest of the governors and so forth, and she rejected him. And by her rejecting him, it made him look bad in front of these governors, so he divorced her. Okay, and this is where Esther comes in. Okay, Esther comes in at this time. So we're going to read Esther chapter 2 and verse 1. Esther chapter 2, verse 1. After these things, when the wrath of King Xerxes was appeased, he remembered Vashti and what she had done and what was decreed against her. What was decreed against her? He banished her. Right? He banished her because if he allowed her to rebel against him by not showing up, then the other woman won't rebel. Back in those days, people had order. The kingdoms had order. Okay? Even the heathens had order. They didn't let the women just talk to them any kind of way. All right? Like we do today with our women. They just say whatever they want. Right? But there was an order. The women knew their place and the men knew their place. But she had a strive. She had a spirit for independence. And it made the whole kingdom look bad. Okay? So this is going into Esther chapter 2, verse 2. And this also goes with us in the truth. Now, if you got a righteous woman and she has a righteous man, you should be in sync with who's the leader, who's the head of the household, and who's next. It's the husband, then the wife, then the children. But say the husband is wicked and the woman is still doing righteously when the Sabbath day comes.
Has arrived.
When the Sabbath day comes and you're not keeping the Sabbath and she correct you, you're the one in error. But vice versa, it should be the same way with the husband on the wife. If she goes off, you should be able to correct her. Okay? And she should get right back in order. So that order that the heathens had, we should have it as well. And this is what Hamashiach was trying to teach us in 1 Corinthians chapter 11 and 1. All right? The order of the Most High. This is Esther chapter 2, verse 1. Then said the king's servants that ministered unto him, let those be fair young virgins sought for the king. And let the king appoint officers in all provinces of his kingdoms, that they may gather together all the fair young virgins unto Shushan the palace,
Has left the
to
conference.
the house of the woman unto the custody of Hagi the king's chamberlain, keeper of the women, and let their things for purification be given them. And let the maiden which pleaseth the king be queen, instead of Vashti. And the thing pleased the king, and he did so. Now in Shushan, the palace there, was a certain Jew whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjamite. Now this is what we read in the Apocrypha. All right? It says, verse 6, who had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captivity which had been carried away with Jeconiah, king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away. And he brought up Hadassah. See, that's her real name, Hadassah, which means myrrh. That is Esther, his uncle's daughter. For she had neither father nor mother. And the maid was fair and beautiful, whom Mordecai, when her father and mother were dead, took for his own daughter. So it came to pass when the king's commandment and his decree was heard, and when many maidens were gathered together unto Shushan the palace, to the custody of Hagi, that Esther was brought also unto the king's house, to the custody of Hagi, keeper of the women. All right, so now we have the king, he's looking for a wife. And so he's having all the women come together, all the virgins come together, and he's going to interview each one to find out which one fits his program to be the queen of Persia. That's a high standard. Okay? So let's drop down. Let's go to verse 9. And the maiden pleased him, and she obtained kindness of him, and he speedily gave her her things for purification. What is the things for purification? At that time, when women get on these cycles, they had certain things that they had women do. Okay? And we're going to read. It's going to tell you. With such things as belonged to her, and 7 maidens which were meant to be given her out of the king's house. And he preferred her and her maids unto the best place of the house of the women. So her purification, that was a year standard. A woman just didn't go and be with the king. She had to be prepped. She had to know how to bathe. She had to know how to suffice her husband, the king. Okay? So these 7 maids prepared this woman for her king a year in advance. Okay? You just couldn't walk up like Mary J. Blige and try to be somebody's wife. You know, throwing your arms all up and all that stuff. You know what I'm saying? You had to be taught how to be a queen. Verse 10. Esther had not showed her people nor her kindred, for Mordecai had charged her that she should not show it. So in this particular verse, Mordecai is telling you, look, I don't want you, Esther, to tell these people what nation you're of. Okay? If you tell them what nation you're of, then they might have a hatred of you. So she hid her nationality of being an Israelite from the tribe of Benjamin. So how is she able to do that? That would tell you right there that the Ethiopians, that the Persians, and the Medes were all dark people. So she blended right on in. The only way people knew who you was based on your nationality. Okay? So she hid her nationality from all these people. Okay? That tells you that these people were of a dark people. Verse 11. And Mordecai walked every day before the court of the women's house to know how Esther did and what should become of her. Now when every maid's turn was come to go to the king, Xerxes, after that she had been 12 months according to the manner